Welcome to the AEN Stories channel.
My name is Jason Miller, and if you asked me to describe myself in one sentence, I'd probably say, I fixed things. I've been doing that since I was a kid in Akron: bikes, leaky faucets, carburetors old enough to vote. You grow up without much and you learn two religions: don't waste, and don't wait for someone else to show up. I'm 43 now. For most of my adult life I was a mechanic, OSA certifications on the wall, grease under my nails, that dead giveaway half-moon of oil that settles at your cuticles no matter how hard you scrub. I could tell a bad alternator by the way a dashboard flickered, a failing water pump by the sound it made when it begged you to turn up the radio. Engines talk if you learn to listen. I met Olivia at Cuyahoga Community College. I was taking night classes, electrical systems, small business accounting, because the old guy who owned the shop I worked at kept saying he'd retire one of these days. Olivia was 22 then, getting her associates in business administration, sharp as a new razor and twice as honest. We met in the hallway by the vending machines. She laughed when my candy bar got stuck and I shook the machine like it owed me money. I bought two. She only ate half. We married 2 years later in her parents' church fellowship hall, folding chairs and Costco sheet cake, a DJ who only had clean versions of anything from the last 20 years. I was 28, she was 24, and people said we were young like it was a diagnosis. It felt old enough when the bills came. We moved to the Pacific Northwest because Olivia wanted a city and I wanted something new. Seattle looked like the kind of place where hard work still meant something. We rented a place in Kent with a view of power lines and a sliver of Mount Rainier if you stood on the balcony and leaned dangerously. I found a job at a neighborhood garage in Renton, the kind with a coffee pot that had been there longer than most of the mechanics and a waiting room TV that lived on whatever channel ran judge shows in the afternoon. Olivia got on at a marketing firm downtown. She'd ride Link light rail in flats and carry heels in her bag. I'd drive to work with knuckles that cracked when the weather changed and wonder how a city could smell like salt, coffee, and wet leaves all at once. If you want to understand why any of this matters, you have to understand her family. Her parents, Sal and Diane, are the kind of people who still put Mr. and Mrs. on their mailbox and keep spare folding chairs in the trunk just in case. She has a little sister, Emily, 7 years younger, a firecracker with a pen. When Emily got into NYU's journalism program, the acceptance letter was a blessing with a price tag. Her folks had saved what they could, but factories closed and paychecks shrink even when pride won't. Family's family, I said that night at dinner, and I meant it. We'll make it work. I knew what make it work meant. It meant trading in the job I loved for a job that paid more. I went from listening to engines to listening to scanners. I took a shift supervisor position at an Amazon fulfillment center out in Sumner because the benefits were good and the wages were better. Nights on my feet, box cutters on my belt, the hum of conveyors in my bones. 2 months in, I added Uber on weekends. People get generous after midnight if you drive them home safe and keep mints in the console. Olivia said I didn't have to. Her parents said they couldn't let me do it alone. I said I've got it and I did, because some promises are weight-bearing walls. We didn't have kids. We tried for a while and then we didn't. I told myself I was okay with that, told Olivia too, but there are rooms and men we don't invite anyone into. On Sundays we'd go to her parents' house in Bellevue for pot roast and old stories. Her dad would hand me a beer and ask about the Seahawks like he cared more than I knew he did. Her mom would pack leftovers in plastic containers she wanted back if you remember. I don't remember the first time Olivia talked about Mark. He was a designer at her firm, Portland Transplant, glasses he used like props in conversations. She mentioned him the way people mention new coffee shops, no big deal. Just a thing in her day. Our lives had split into lanes, mine full of shift schedules and ride requests, hers full of client decks and we should circle back. We slept in the same bed, but our clocks were set to different time zones. The payments to NYU went out like heartbeats, steady, essential, too expensive to notice individually. I kept a spreadsheet on my phone of what I called our yeses: yes to Emily's tuition, yes to Sal's new tires after he skidded that winter, yes to a plane ticket when Diane wanted to see her sister in Phoenix and the Social Security check didn't stretch far enough that month. We could afford yes because I said no to other things, weekends away, nicer tools, knees that didn't ache. I told myself none of that would matter if the house stayed warm and the people under it felt safe. If you've ever watched a car drift out of alignment, you know there's rarely one blowout. It's little hits, a pothole, a curb, a passenger who leans wrong. One day you're driving straight and the next your hands are tired from fighting left. The first pothole was time. I lived by shifts, she lived by deadlines. I'd come home an hour after sunrise, smelling like cardboard and exhaustion. She'd head out with a tote bag and a coffee cup and a joke about me being a ghost. We kissed at thresholds more than at kitchens. The second pothole was language. She'd talk about color palettes and user personas, and I'd talk about how your back feels after 12 hours under sodium lights. Neither of us was trying to be boring. Life has a way of making you fluent in different things. She started going to more work happy hours. I didn't say no. I didn't say much. The nights I wasn't driving, I'd sit with Diane's dog while her mom went out, or run over to Sal's to fix a garbage disposal that rattled like it had opinions. I got good at small quiets, replacing a porch light, putting air in a tire without a lecture, answering "How are you?" with "Good, you?" Because men are taught the weather forecast matters more than our insides. Olivia got promoted. She bought a blazer that could survive a conference room and a downpour. She started saying she wanted more. More what? Life, she'd say, and my first thought, wrong, unfair, was we pay for life in installments. I didn't notice how often her phone lit up until I did. A laugh she saved for the screen. A text at 11 p.m. That made her smile at a wall. She told me more than once, "You live for work," and I wanted to say we live because of work, but I was too tired to sharpen the sentence. Emily came home on breaks with stories we pretended to worry about and secretly loved, late-night editing shifts at the paper, professors with impossible standards, pizza that cost more than my first apartment. We went over budgets. We told her not to feel guilty. She cried when we signed the last tuition check junior year. I told her to make it count. I didn't have to tell her, she already was. The night everything started moving faster, Olivia came home glowing. Not the "I got a compliment" glow, the "I danced in a kitchen that wasn't ours" glow. She said she and Mark had grabbed a drink after work, nothing big, just needed to decompress. I nodded, because I'd already learned you can be right and also be a jerk, and I didn't want to be either. The next morning, Olivia left early. I made coffee for Diana and took her to a doctor's appointment because her knee was doing that thing again. I put a sticky note on the counter for Olivia that said "turkey leftovers. Eat." It felt like love, even if it looked like a post-it. By spring, the alignment was off enough that I had to hold the wheel all day. We fought like people who still believe in the thing they're fighting about. She said I was married to work. I said you don't get to be married to freedom without someone else making deposits. She said she felt unseen. I said the problem with men like me is we think fixing a sink is the same as fixing a dead feeling. We didn't talk about Mark because we weren't there yet, at least not out loud. Then Diane's stroke hit like a tire blowout. Grocery store, near the self-check. 1 minute she was reading the display screen, the next she was on the floor, right side slack, a bag of oranges rolling away like someone tipped the world. Sal called me because he calls me for everything now, for better or worse. I was on my way to my second job when his number lit up. "Harborview," he said. "Now." I turned around so hard the seatbelt locked. Hospitals have their own weather. You can feel the pressure drop when the automatic doors open. It's the kind of air that remembers prayers and swears both. Diane was in the ICU when I got there, Olivia already pacing, Sal crushed small by a chair. Emily was on the first Alaska flight she could find out of JFK. I went into fixer mode the way you go into muscle memory in a skid. I found a nurse who would talk straight. I made a list of meds on a napkin and filled what could be filled. I got Sal coffee and actually made him drink it. I let Olivia cry into my shirt and didn't ask who she wished she was crying into. At 2 in the morning I closed my eyes in a chair a foot too short and felt more married than I had in months. Diane stabilized on day 3. On day 4, Olivia's phone kept buzzing while she slept hunched over a blanket. I picked it up to move it to her bag and Mark's name was right there, Bold like a headline. You know that feeling when an engine light comes on? You know it has nothing to do with the gas cap, but you still stop and check the gas cap because it's easier than reading codes. I didn't open the phone. I put it in her purse and went downstairs to call Emily about classes and see if Sal had eaten the muffin I left by his elbow. I told myself I was being decent. Maybe I was being a coward. On day 5, Mark solved my moral quandary for me. He showed up. I saw him before I knew it was him, because you can tell not family men in hospitals by the way they looked for someone to tell them where to put their hands. He had a sleek jacket too nice for beeping machines and a face that said he sleeps with white noise and clean sheets. He texted as he walked and almost hit a supply cart. "Liv," he said when he spotted her in the corridor. He said it in a voice too soft for a hall like that. Olivia's eyes went wide. She stood as if standing were a foreign language. "You can't be here," she whispered, and then, "You shouldn't be here," in a way that said she might have wanted him there anyway. "I wanted to support you." He reached for her hand and she let him hold it a second too long. If this were a movie, the camera would cut away. But this was real life, which is meaner. Sal came around the corner at exactly the wrong time to see exactly the wrong thing. His face went through the 5 stages of grief in 3 seconds and landed on anger with the skill of a man who used to break up fights in a factory break room. "Who the hell are you?" he asked. No preamble, no polite. Mark started. "A co-worker," Olivia said too fast. "Not like that," I said, "because sometimes I'm slower than I want to be and faster than is kind." Everyone looked at me like I'd teleported. Sal turned to Olivia the way fathers do when the thing you feared has a name now. "You tell me right now." Olivia didn't lie with words. She lied with silence. That was enough. Sal's hands shook. He walked back into Diane's room because he is a man who knows you don't say some sentences in front of your wife on machines. "Go," Olivia told Mark in a voice I'd never heard her use. "Please. Now." He went like he'd practiced leaving. He didn't look at me because you don't look at the man you just stole hours from. I stood in the hall. It should have been my line to step forward and say something righteous. Instead, my body did what it does when a car stalls in the intersection. I checked if anyone was hurt, and I moved the traffic to the shoulder. Sal didn't wait long. He came back out into the hall with a look I wouldn't wish on anyone and held out his hand, not to hit, not to shake. He held out my wife's phone. "I figured out your passcode," he said to Olivia, which we both knew was a parental lie. "You never were good at hiding things you wanted to keep." He shoved the screen towards me. I didn't take it. He shoved it towards her. She did. Texts don't lie if you read enough of them. You can always tell when something starts as a joke and becomes a habit and then a secret and then a lifestyle. The first weeks were harmless. The last weeks were not. Sal didn't yell. He saved that for after. In that hallway he did something worse. He told the truth. "You lost a husband who was like a son to us," he said to Olivia, voice shaking. "Shame on you." He turned to me then, and the worst part, the part I still can't tell if I appreciate or resent, is that he looked exactly how I felt, betrayed and too tired to carry anything else. I didn't yell either, because I don't. It's not drama, it's wiring. "I need air," I said, and walked down to the lobby because air is the one thing hospitals don't charge you for. A man was asleep on 3 chairs shoved together. A vending machine buzzed itself into a migraine. Somewhere, a TV played a news segment about traffic like any of it mattered. I sat with my elbows on my knees and tried to pretend that the numbers on the coffee machine looked like an engine code I could clear. I thought about Diane asleep upstairs, about Emily on a plane writing emails to professors to explain why life sometimes happens to your grades. I thought about Olivia's hands, all the ways I'd learned them and all the ways someone else had. I thought about the way love sneaks in quiet and leaves loud and how I wished mine would do the reverse. I went back up because you go back up. You don't live with yourself if you don't. Sal was still in the hall. His eyes were wet and furious. "What do you want to do?" he asked, like men ask when they want to tell you but they respect you anyway. "I'm going to sit with Diane," I said. "Then I'm going home. Then we'll sort it out." Olivia looked at me the way people look at a bridge they know they burned but hope is somehow still there. "Jason, I'm sorry," she said, "and if you've ever been offered a sorry that arrives a year late, you know how heavy it is." "I know," I said, because it was true and useless. I sat with Diane till sunrise and told her about an old Ford I rebuilt with my boss back in Akron, the one where we field timed it by ear because the mark paint was gone. She squeezed my hand with her left one, the right still stubborn, and I pretended that was an answer. I went home. I packed a bag. I called my boss at the warehouse and told him I wouldn't be in. He said okay in that manager voice of men who have their own fires at home. I slept 2 hours and then drove back to the hospital to give Sal the list of questions the nurses actually answer if you ask them in the right order. That night, I told Olivia to meet me at our place after visiting hours. We sat at the kitchen table like we were in a deposition, in a way we were. "How long?" I asked, and watched the way she picked at a water ring as if it would confess for her. 6 months, she said. "Why?" She said something about feeling seen and alive and like herself with him. She said something about me being gone a lot, which was true. She said something about the way I talk about shifts and schedules like they're poetry. I said one thing that mattered: I did all that for your family. She winced like I'd thrown a dish at a wall. "I didn't ask you to." I laughed, mean, tired. "You didn't have to. I wanted to. That's worse for you, I guess." We didn't throw anything. We didn't break plates. We broke exactly what we should have broken: our marriage. It's almost boring when you write it down. Divorce in Washington state is no fault, which is the polite way of saying the law doesn't care who did what if the house is safe and the hours are right. No kids made it cleaner on paper and sharper in the room. We split money and mugs and Christmas ornaments that suddenly all meant something. I gave her our couch because I didn't want to sit where someone else had. I kept my tools because some splits are non-negotiable. When Emily flew back to New York next, she hugged me before she hugged her sister. "I'll make this count," she said into my jacket. "I know what it cost." I told her she didn't owe me anything, which was technically true and mostly a lie. She owed me exactly what she was already giving, the knowledge that the checks weren't stupid. Sal and Diane kept me. I didn't ask, they didn't announce it, it just happened. Sal called me about his truck like he always did. Diane asked me to move a shelf lower in the pantry because her right hand was proving how stubborn tendons can be. They never badmouthed their daughter in front of me, which is its own kind of loyalty. They also never told me I was wrong to leave, which is another. I left the warehouse because some debts you pay turn into habits, and this one couldn't be mine anymore. I went back to the garage. The first day my hands smelled like brake cleaner instead of sanitizer. I cried in the bay with the door down and told my boss it was allergies. He nodded like men do when you lie to them and they don't want to take your dignity. Olivia moved into an apartment in Capitol Hill that looked like a catalog got tired. She kept her job. I heard she broke things off with Mark once real life showed up and demanded rent be paid and laundry be folded. I didn't feel triumphant and I didn't feel nothing. If there's a word for relief that's ashamed of itself, that's the one. We didn't speak for months, then spoke politely about Diane's physical therapy schedule and Sal's cholesterol. We sat on opposite ends of hospital waiting rooms and said how are you like we used to mean it. People always want the clincher, the how it ended. It didn't. It turned into days. That's what most endings are, days where you get up and make coffee and go to work and say yes to the right texts and no to the wrong ones and become somebody you like in a way you can live with. On Thanksgiving the next year, Sal called me 2 days early with a list disguised as a casual conversation. "You coming?" he asked. "If you want me," I said, which is what men mean when we mean, "Are we still family?" "We want you," he said, which is what fathers say when they've made a decision and will live with it. I went. Olivia did not. Diane handed me the carving knife and Emily took a picture that she printed and mailed to me like people used to. On the back she wrote, "Thank you for everything I can't put on a page." I started coaching a little league team because the shop owner's kid needed a coach and he asked me the way men ask each other for help, sheepish and direct. On Saturdays, I stood on a chalk line and told 8-year-olds to keep their eye on a ball that wanted to be anywhere but a glove, and something in me that had been quiet got loud in a healthy way. Olivia and I ran into each other once at a farmer's market near Pike Place. She had a bag of peaches and a look I knew too well. We said hello like adults. She apologized again, different this time, like she'd practiced not crying. I told her I hoped she was doing better. She nodded and asked about Diane's hand. It's funny the things you can talk about when you can't talk about anything else. Emily graduated. I watched the live stream in the shop office, earbuds in, dirt on my knuckles, engine hoist humming in the next bay. She said something in her speech about people who built bridges so I could run across them. I turned the volume down so I could have a private moment inside public noise. If you want me to tell you I'm dating, I guess I am. There's a woman who teaches second grade at a school near the shop. We met over a flat tire in the morning drop-off lane. She laughs with her whole face and doesn't mind that my hands look like maps. We're not rushing. We're not dragging our feet. We're doing days. The last time I saw Olivia's dad mad was also the last time I saw him proud. He stopped by the shop with donuts and a problem: his lawn mower wouldn't start and his pride wouldn't let him take it to a place that charges too much. We fixed it in the alley behind the shop in 20 minutes and he looked at me like he did the night he gave a toast at our wedding and told a room I was a good man. I hope she knows what she lost, he said, then looked like a guy who realized he said too much. She knows, I said, because I think she does. People want to make a morality play out of stories like this. Man sacrifices, woman strays, parents choose, justice prevails. It's not that clean. There's a universe where I work less and talk more and she reaches for me instead of her phone. There's a universe where she doesn't, and I leave sooner and we save everyone a year of their life. I don't live in those universes. I live in this one, where I did what I thought was right and paid what it cost and came out with a life I recognize when I see it in the mirror. Sometimes late, after the shop is closed and the lights are off and the building settles the way metal does when it gets to be itself, I sit on a stool and think about the word mechanic. People think it means wrenches and shop rags. It means listen. It means don't guess. It means don't force the thing that doesn't want to fit. It means replace what's burned, clean what you can, and torque it to spec so it holds. Not everything can be fixed. Some things can be rebuilt. If you're lucky, and if you pay attention, you get to learn the difference in time. I don't know what you want from an ending. If you want revenge, I didn't get it. If you want redemption, you could argue we both did in different ways. If you want proof that sacrifice isn't stupid, here you go. Emily is a journalist now. She called me last month from a city you only visit if you believe in people. She said, I did it, and I said, I knew you would. And then we didn't say anything for a minute because some things you don't add words to. I still fix things. Mostly cars. Sometimes small chairs at Sal and Diane's because Diane's hand won't let her tighten screws anymore. Sometimes myself. If you want to know how it ends, really ends, I can't help you. It hasn't. It just keeps going. I get up, I go to the shop, I keep my promises small and my tools clean. The people who stayed keep staying. The ones who left keep leaving. On holidays, I bring pie to a house that isn't mine and carve turkey with a knife I used to use in a different life and sit at a table where I belong because someone decided belonging can survive paperwork. It's not a movie. It's better than that, most days. It's a life, and for now, it holds. Thank you for listening my story. If you want more raw, real, and gripping stories like this one, subscribe to the AEN Stories channel. Your support keeps these stories alive.